listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Hey, how's it going? Hope you're well, and as always, thank you for choosing to listen to my podcast, Straight to Video. I'm your host, Rob Lane, and on today's show, I check in with guitarist and songwriter Mr. Craig Joyner, who I'm sure you'll agree after hearing our talk will realise what a lovely bloke he is, and want to go out and listen to his brand new solo record, A Kind of Calm, which is out now. Many of you will know Craig from his band Romeo's Daughter, who, as I mentioned in our chat, and to many of you in the past, were one of the first bands to really be a gateway for me to hard rock music, what with the inclusion of their song Heaven in the Backseat on the Nightmare on Elm Street 5 soundtrack, and the song to this day is one of my all-time favourites. Not only is it an amazingly hooky song, but sonically it's something really special, which I'm sure was helped by having none other than Mutt Lange at the production helm of that first Romeo's Daughter album, which is something we dive into during our talk. Craig also fills us in on the recording of his new album, and also how his songwriting was affected after his serious health scare a few years ago. There's some really great stuff in this conversation. As always, this Straight to Video podcast is proudly presented to you in association with Affinity Photo, an incredible piece of photo editing software which I use all the time for graphic design. It's used to create the podcast episode art what you see each week with the cool video cover, and it's an extremely affordable alternative to other programs on the market, so please check them out at affinity.serif.com. Alright, if you'd like to pick up a copy of Craig's latest album, A Kind of Calm, which is out now, it's available to listen to wherever you stream music, or physical copies are available exclusively from craigjoynermusic.com. And Craig is playing live dates throughout the UK for the rest of the year. But for now, please enjoy my straight to video chat with Craig Joyner.
I see you're all axed up there in the back. Are you a bass player?
I am, yes. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Ed, who used to play in Romeo's Daughter.
Oh, right. Yeah, he's a great... I know. He's in Romeo's Daughter. I think Romeo's Daughter, you need probably a couple of GCSEs to play. And Ed's like... He's a little bit up there, really. Bought my first guitar from Ed. Well, my dad did.
I think I saw some comment like, oh yeah, Ed used to like show all the young musicians what they needed.
Oh God, he used to hold court upstairs at Hammond's in Watford. He used to sit on the counter and just hold court, and people just used to stand there watching him doing, Mark King for days,
Shut up. Yeah, I don't do any of that kind of playing.
Oh, he's top class, Ed, top class.
So how's things with you? Good to see you.
And yourself, thanks for having me.
It's a wonderfully busy time for you right now. You're recently back from Germany with Romeo's Daughter, and you have your brand new solo album, A Kind of Calm, out now, and doing solo shows. I think you recently opened for CCR at the O2.
Absolutely, yeah.
Must feel good to be so busy and have all these cool creative outlets.
It's great, actually. It's so weird because a couple of people have said, cool, this is different. It's so different to go into this acoustic kind of singer-songwritery sort of almost folky element, which I consider folk not to be not a million miles away from rock, especially when you go back to Led Zeppelin and listen to all the mandolins and all that kind of stuff. But I think to do something the same as or similar to Romeo's Daughter would feel like too much of a, not enough of a contrast. And I wouldn't want to do anything that was too similar to Romeo's Daughter without Romeo's Daughter.
Yeah, you might as well just do a new Romeo's Daughter album.
Exactly. That doesn't make any sense. And not only that, who'd want to listen to me when you got Lee Matty? There's just no way. It's just a waste of time. I might as well sing a little bit quieter out and try and get away with it.
Like you say, though, it's like folk music and rock music. There's not that much of a division as what people might think. And it's like when I'm a big country fan, I listen to all the modern country stuff. When people give me a funnier look, I'm like, do you realise that's kind of like the modern day hard rock now? A lot of it is. It's just the same songs.
I think the lines that surround country music are getting finer and finer and finer. Country music goes everywhere. It goes AOR, it goes rock, it goes bluegrass, it goes folk, evangelistic. It goes everywhere, doesn't it? Really does. Yeah, I mean, crikey, there's some country stuff that, I mean, it's the same as everything. You know, you can't stand it. But there are other things in country where you just think, crikey, it's just the best music I've ever heard.
Has any of your songs gone into country? Because I know you had stuff in pop and all that kind of thing.
I've definitely written stuff with a country flavour. There's no two ways about it. I had some stuff on, not this album, but a couple of songs for the next one that started life with definitely much more of a country feel. But again, it's a song is a song. You can put any kind of treatment on it you want. You can make it whatever you want.
How was the response to Romeo's Daughter out in Germany recently? Because you've had the album Slipstream last year. It must be humbling to have such a loyal fan base after all this time.
It's brilliant, actually. The fans are totally loyal. There's no two ways about it. And the gig that we did in Germany, it was a festival, but it wasn't necessarily a festival where we were going to be known by loads of people. But we were chuffed that quite a few Romeo's Daughter fans turned up. They were expecting, I think, in the region of about 500, and they ended up with about 800. It was great. The sun came out when we were playing, and it was great. Couldn't have hoped for more.
It must be close to 40 years now since the original formation of Romeo's Daughter, right? Was it like mid-80s?
Well, Romeo's Daughter really sort of kicked off in 87.
Right. It's getting up there then.
It's getting up there. I didn't even realise that it was getting that close. But so, yeah, jeez.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. I feel much better now.
Your new album, though, A Kind of Calm, showcases your acoustic and folk influences. Sounds amazing, mate. Totally stripped back with some added backing vocals and some percussion. How was the album recorded and who else is featured on there?
Well, you're looking at the studio.
Nice.
So it was all recorded by myself at home, apart from there's a couple of trad ones on there, Mary and the Soldier, where I recorded with a mate of mine, Simon Painter. Just had a couple of mics set up and we just did the whole thing. Like, just wanted to do it as a one-take thing.
Guitar and vocal at the same time?
Yeah. So that one, the Humpback Whale song, those two specifically, they were just one take. I wanted to do it that way because it's so strange when you record separately, especially in this kind of thing, when you sing a songwriter, you play the guitar. I mean, some of them will play to a click, but some of them won't. But if you play the guitar to a click, you know what it's like. Put it down and then you go to sing on the top and you think, what am I doing?
Totally different feel.
I'd done something different on the acoustic guitar because I wasn't singing.
Yeah.
So in the end, we just thought, well, it's got to be both at the same time. So that's what we did. I think there was a couple of drop-ins at one point, but we got it to the point where you'd sort of go back at about 8 bars, 16 bars, something like that, and then just fall into it, you know, so you just get the position right and sing along with it and then bang. And I think with those, we pretty much got away with maybe one take or just right from the top.
Who's doing the backing vocals?
My wife.
Really? Oh, amazing.
Yeah, Laura. Well, she's known as Lolly to her family and friends, so we call her Lolly J just to make her, you know, a tad hipper.
Yeah.
I mean, she's literally in the next room. So it's like, Lolly, come on, can you do a backing vocal for me? So she would come in, do a backing vocal. I had a young lady come in and do violin. All the boron I did myself. Any bass guitar I did myself. Any mandolin I did myself. And a couple of other backing vocals were done by a fellow called Jez Paul. And he actually features as a lyricist on some of the songs as well. I've worked with Jez and known him for a long, long time.
No relation to Ed Paul?
No. None at all.
I saw the credit. I thought, is that a pseudonym or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have like any particular vision how you wanted it to sound prior to putting the songs down? Was there like maybe a favourite album of yours which you used as a blueprint, or does it just simply reflect a lot of acoustic influences?
You know what? There's quite a lot of folk albums. I mean, there was an album by a fellow called Chris Wood. The guitar sound that he gets is incredibly earthy, got a lot of depth to it. I don't like the real glossy acoustic Hollywood kind of sounds. I like them to have a bit of depth to them and a little bit organic, if you will, you know, just that kind of thing. So a lot of the stuff that I did, I tried to get it as close mic'd as I could without it booming. So that was a little tricky because the further you are away from the mic, the easier it is to move around and still get the same sound. Whereas if you're up front, you've only got to move just a fraction to the left or the fraction to the right and the sound completely changes. And when you try and drop anything like that in, waste of time. It just sounds like a completely different instrument. So it was a bit of a faff because I was on my own recording it. But yeah, it was, you know, it was good. It was good fun. Good fun doing it that way. Because a lot of the times, you know, when people say, oh, I used to do demos, you know, and there's no such thing as a demo now, you know, in the sense that you can start with Pro Tools and just keep going. And sometimes, you know, when they say, oh, you're chasing the demo because we're just trying to get the sound and the feel that we got on a demo. And now, you know, if you get it right to start with, you can just faff around with it and work from there, you know.
When you're recording acoustic stuff as stripped down as this,
yeah,
is it new strings or do you leave them on for a while?
Oh, I'm definitely a bit of an old stringer.
Yeah, I thought that might be the way to go, because sometimes you can hear something recorded, and especially if you hear like, I don't know, if I hear like a young band, if someone shares something from a young band, I'm like, they put fresh strings on that before they start.
A lot of times they're just too zingy, aren't they?
It feels great, but...
Yeah, but it's just a bit too bright and a bit too this and a bit too that. I mean, you listen to like some of the real early, like Crosby, Stills, Nash, Young. I mean, you listen to those strings and you think, God, I bet they bought the guitar with those strings on it. And they're just thick and ropey and they just sound wonderful, don't they? They've just got so much character. You listen to some of those Nick Drake records and you just think, crikey, they're just old as the hills, those.
You can hear the muck on the fretboard.
You can hear the muck, yeah.
Do you have any particular special songs on the album? I love the song Rainbow and also The Tree.
I was really proud of all of them, actually. Mary and the Soldier, because that was a one take. I really enjoyed that because that song goes way back with me. Wedding Day of Eliza May, I really enjoyed doing that. And Old Will, I mean, I sort of consider that a bit of folk prog. It's got all these different dips and it's about 6.5 minutes long for a start, but I mean, which is nothing unusual considering, it's a folk song. A lot of them are like 9 million verses long. No, I really enjoyed doing all of them and I sort of treated every single song as it came. I didn't have anything in mind, nothing that I thought I definitely wanted to be like that song or this song. I just did it. And sometimes I was thinking, I could put this on it and that on it. And then I'd end up stripping it all off. Like with The Tree, I mean, there's just 2 guitars on that. One main one and then a double track that comes in on the middle section, and I just thought, I'm happy with that, that kind of says what it needs to say. And sometimes you can definitely put the kitchen sink in and just go too far.
Yeah, but you have to really step back in this kind of format. I mean, songwriting is obviously a very personal thing. I mean, you've had some well-documented health issues in the past few years, scarily having a heart attack whilst on stage with your pal Rhino from Status Quo. He's been on the show. How does something as serious as that come through in your songwriting? Do you become more grateful and reflective, or does it open different creative thoughts? Did you notice a difference when you started writing again?
All the above, yeah. I mean, to have something like that happen it's a complete life changer, and life from that moment on is different, totally different. Health is different. The way you look at stuff is totally different. Any pains that you get during the day, you think, oh, here we go. Well, today's the day. It might happen again, but I don't dwell on it. It was quite weird when we went to Germany at the weekend. It was the first time I'd been back to Germany since I had the heart attack.
Wow, man.
And that was weird. There was a bit of PTSD going on, I think.
Yeah.
I felt very odd going into the airport, I have to say, very odd.
Almost cathartic to do it, though, and close a door on it, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go back and, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it was very much that way. As I say, we got up quite early for the flight, so we were there at about 7:30, and I felt very odd, I have to say.
Did you tell the rest of the band that?
Told Lee a bit later on, and she went, really? That's why you were so bloody useless? No, she said, crikey. She said, I can totally understand where that came from, and yeah, it felt very odd.
I was listening to some of the lyrics in the single, mention stuff about being a simple man and like things like possessions and all that kind of stuff. Is that any kind of reflection to it? You've been like, material things don't matter anymore?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it was a totally fictional thing, that song, but the way I write, a lot of the time, if I get an idea and I put it down, I just sing a load of gobbledygook, just a load of rubbish. And I know there's a lot of other people that do a similar kind of thing. And I just sing a load of rubbish, and sometimes lines just come out. And I think that is probably the way that you're feeling. And I'd agree with that. Yeah, totally. I mean, you say things and you say phrases, or you hint at phrases, you hint at words, that are in your psyche. And I think that absolutely is the case. Yeah, without a doubt.
The album still does showcase your guitar playing as well, even though it's acoustic based. I mean, it's not just strum chords, which you could have easily done.
Yeah.
It would have still carried the songs, but there's still some great guitar work on there.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed doing that because I like working with tunings. I like the way tunings ring. I like the way it makes chords sound. It's very, very different to just playing in concert. And I really enjoy that side of things. I mean, I generally use a couple of different tunings. One's a real low droney and the other one is just G. It's like the Keith tuning, G with the 6th string. But I just really enjoy that. And if you get it right, as I say, you make sure the strings are ringing in the right way. So when you change chords, everything else is left ringing. And I quite like that. It's like its own little, orchestra, within itself.
Have you always done that? Or is that something you've took to in the last few years?
I've played tunings more and more as time's gone on. When I first started, yes, it was very much concert. But then I would say in the last certainly in the last 15 years, I would say that I've started using, tunings and really sort of got stuck into it. And not only that, they can inspire a song and a way of working anyway, just with what they are.
I'm a big Goo Goo Dolls fan. I've seen him live. Like, every song is taking a different guitar because he's like totally messed with the tunings on them.
Well, how many times have you tried to learn something, from a band like the Goo Goo Dolls, and you think, why can't I hear this? What is going on? It's just a tuning. I watched a great program with Mark Knopfler because he was talking about Romeo and Juliet, and of course that's a tuning. And if you try to play it, you can sort of get by doing it, but then when you listen to how he does it, and then just straight away the strings work in a different way. You hit the strings in a different way. And the one note that you thought was maybe on the B string is actually on the G string. And it rings in a different way, and it makes everything sound different. I always remember watching years ago, there was a great documentary on Mick Jones from Foreigner. At the time, he was working with Billy Joel. They were like having this songwriting chat, and they were talking about Mick Jones's songs. He said, well, try and play Waiting for a Girl Like You. And Billy Joel was playing it on the piano, but he was playing it in a key that he could sing it in. The only thing is, he said, it just doesn't work in that key because the chords don't work the same. And then the minute you put it in this key, and then he took over and put it in the right key, and it's like, whoa, bloody hell, it's a different song. That's Waiting for a Girl Like You, And it just works straight away. And it's funny how tempos and keys and stuff, it has a strange way of working with a song. You've really got to faff around with them. Sometimes they come straight away and you think that song was born to be in that key. But then there are others where for some reason you're fighting it, and you think, why am I fighting it? One of the songs on the last Romeo's Daughter album, I had this riff and I was working at it, and it was in I think it was around sort of 104, BPM, something like that. And the riff was like, jagga, jagga. And I was thinking, I really like the riff. I really like the melody I had. I couldn't get it to work for love nor money. And then I took it up like 20 BPM and played the whole thing, and then got the song like that. It was the first idea I had, and it was the last song that I finished. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Many of us know you from your time as guitarist in Romeo's Daughter. It's a band I regularly quote as being one of the first to really introduce me to rock music. I was a huge Nightmare on Elm Street fan and used to love soundtracks. So I would hear a lot of rock bands through soundtracks. So hearing Romeo's Daughter with that huge Mutt, Lange, Def Leppard sound, I was immediately hooked. And Heaven in the Backseat, still one of my all-time favourite songs to this day.
Thank you.
But your introductions to guitar was through acoustic and folk music, so the latest album is like a full circle and tribute to those influences. Do you remember much about getting your first guitar? From your grandma, I believe, at 6 years old, from a holiday in Spain.
Yeah, I can definitely remember that turning up.
Is that one of your earliest memories, do you think?
I think it is. People say, I can remember loads from age of 5, and I don't know if I can remember that much, but I can definitely remember that. I definitely remember getting the first guitar.
Was it a left field present, or had you showed interest before then?
I remember my gran saying, we're going to Spain. That's where they make guitars. So we'll get you a guitar. At the time I was thinking, she'll come back with a Spanish guitar or something like that. But it was a steel strung guitar. Yeah, I had that, and tried to work a couple of things out on my own. Took a couple of lessons at school when I was about 9. And
that's not the guitar behind you, is it? I was going to wonder if you still had it.
Actually, no, that's a mate of mine's, and I'm faffing around with it, trying to glue the cracks back together. So no.
Do you still have that first guitar?
I do. It's in the shed.
Who was you listening to at the time?
When I first started was people like John Denver, Tom Paxton, players like that, Don McLean, those sort of things. And then when I moved further on into doing even more folky stuff or country stuff, I was listening to Paul Brady, Andy Irving. Nowadays, I think Chris Wood is a fantastic guitar player. But then you listen to people you'll know Alison Krauss and Union Station, and you listen to those fellas play, and it's just some of the most pristine acoustic recording you could ever hear. I love all that stuff, and always have done. I remember when I first got into rock as well. At the time, I'd think, oh, no, I can't strum a guitar. What are you talking about? I can't do that. That's sacrilege. You can't strum a guitar. But then I watched Top of the Pops, and Rush came on and did Tom Sawyer.
So many lightning bolt moments with people with Top of the Pops.
Never forget it. When he hit that last chord, and the guitar just went, oh, that's it. That's it right there.
Thursday nights have a lot to answer for, don't they, I think?
Yeah, definitely.
Thursday nights and Friday mornings talking to your mates at school. Did you see that last night?
I know. I actually went out, there was a knockoff record shop in Watford.
A knockoff record shop?
Yeah, they used to get all these albums with the corners cut off. So they'd be X promotional or X this, and they'd be a bit knackered. So they'd cut the corner off to make it definite, I remember going to that shop and bought Exit Stage Left, Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures. took them home, played them on the record player, ripped the life out of myself. I've been listening to Don McLean and John Denver, and now all of a sudden I'm listening to flipping Permanent Waves, and Spirit of Radio, and it's like, my God.
How much did you pay for them albums? Was it like super cheap?
Oh, super, yeah, like £1.50, something like that,
Yeah, your life is going to change for £1.50.
Yeah, exactly. And Top of the Pops, the night before, it was just brilliant.
Who were some of the first bands that blew you away? I've heard you mention a couple, again, like contrasting ones, John Denver in 1979 and then Rush being a big deal.
Yeah, I've always been a bit of a fan of prog, early Genesis, early Yes. I love Peter Gabriel. A lot of those early albums, like I say, Foreigner and Speedwagon and all them sort of bands. Van Halen. I mean, crikey, when you first heard Eddie Van Halen.
What was your introduction to Van Halen? My all-time favourite band, and I was late to the party on that one, but what was your introduction? Was it the first album?
I think I would have had the first album, but listening to Panama, that was 84. That was pretty much my introduction, which I know was their last album with Dave Lee Roth. But I love that. And then Women and Children First and all that stuff, I mean, yeah, the solo actually came later. Eruption and all that kind of stuff came later. But listening to the solo of Panama and Jump and Hot for Teacher, I mean, for crying out loud. To this day, I mean, there's always loads of talk about the Beat It solo, and Steve Lukather going, well, I didn't do the solo. I just did all the rhythm, but you listen to what he did. Again, you listen to that solo.
It's like a greatest hits of Van Halen.
Unbelievable. And when you listen to that solo on its own, because there's quite a few things online now, isn't there, where they just solo the guitar work on it. You listen to them. Oh, I heard Panama with the guitar and it's Todd, just from start to finish. And unbelievable.
It's like no other.
I love the way Nuno Bettencourt talks about Eddie Van Halen. When people start saying, oh, you're the new Eddie Van Halen, he goes, not a chance, not a chance. I love the way he talks about that.
He just becomes a fan again.
Yeah, and he always was, and you can see that in his face, I love that. It's so humbling for a lot of guitar players out there, budding guitar players who are quite easy to jump ship, and say, he's not all that, When you listen to someone like Nuno Bettencourt talk so passionately about Eddie Van Halen, you just think, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, just any kind of guitar for me. As you can tell, Rob, any kind of guitar, mate. And it doesn't matter what it is.
Did you always see a career in music as a possibility? Like, was you encouraged through school, or was it like, no, you got to get a trade or whatever?
Mum was always saying, and Dad, they were always saying, just have something in the background. Mum was she was much more of the, I can't see it happening. Whereas my dad was more of the, I'd love it if it did. That's not to say that Mum didn't feel the same way, but I think she just thought it was more unlikely. Whereas my dad was more, God, if this did happen, how good would that be? How good would it be? And I remember the first time I told my mum that we were going to America to do promotion for Romeo's daughter, she cried her eyes out because it was like, it was happening. It was actually happening. I'll never forget that moment, ever. Yeah, it was a brilliant thing because there was all of a sudden a possibility that you could make a living out of this, and it could work. And, it didn't work, I would say, in the classic way. I didn't become Madonna overnight or Def Leppard, but I managed to stay in the music business and work and write and make a living out of it.
Was publishing always an early part of Romeo's Daughter for your songwriting and stuff?
Yeah, it started off when Romeo's Daughter finished the first album. There was a fella, as I've mentioned earlier, a fella called Jez Paul, and he worked for the library division of Zomba Publishing, who were part of Jive. Well, Jive Records were part of Zomba, and we were signed to Jive. And he said, listen, if you want to do a library album at any point, then just give us a shout. He said, you should do one. You absolutely should. It's a great sideline. And that's what I did. So the first one I did was 96. When I was writing for the Romeo's Daughter stuff, when Mutt got involved, a lot of things changed. When John Parr got involved, a lot of things changed because that's how they work. They're both songwriters and massive songwriters. And I'm just some Joe from St. Albans. The last gig I'd done was the Horn of Plenty in St. Albans. And, all of a sudden you're working with John Parr, St. Elmo's Fire, and you're working with Mutt Lange, Def Leppard, and the list is just like forever. And it was incredibly overwhelming. And you just thought that everything that you had written or were writing was just no good. Just no good.
Even though they'd obviously seen something in you.
Absolutely, yeah. But you just thought, I can't compete with that. And not that I was trying to compete, because at the time I was just learning so much from them. I mean, I remember one morning that we stayed at Mutt's for about, 6 weeks. I remember me saying, because we went there thinking we were going to be there for a weekend. So we had enough clothes for a weekend. And he said, you got to stay longer. It's rock and roll. Don't worry about clothes. It's rock and roll. Just let them get grubby. It's rock and roll. Live it. And one morning he came down, he said, I've written a song. And I said, oh, yeah. And it was just me and him in the studio. He said, you got to listen to this and see what you reckon. And he sang, Get Out of My Dreams, Get Into My Car. He'd written it that morning. I was the first person to hear it.
No shit.
And the great thing about him was he could describe something and you could hear how it was going to sound with him just playing. He had an ovation. So he was just playing this ovation. And you know, the Def Leppard way of singing and that way that you did all the backing vocals, that's him, you know, and it's just how he does it. And so he's just doing this song. He's going, get out of my dreams, get in the backseat, baby. You know, all this stuff. And he's just completely doing the whole thing. Any BVs, you know, he would just say, there'll be a BV here. Amazing.
He cracked that formula early on, didn't he?
Yeah. And then 3 weeks later, you know, after we'd gone, he'd recorded it with Billy Ocean, and that was that.
How much older was Mutt to you guys?
So we were sort of early 20s. He would have been early 40s.
Okay.
So he definitely had a good 22, 23 years on us. Our manager, Olga, they'd been married in the past. So that's how we kind of got to know Mutt. And he was significantly older to us, you know, and same with John Parr, you know. They were just hugely influential in what we were doing and how you craft songs and how you put them together. And it wasn't anything that you felt that you were taking part of at the time. You were doing what you did, but it was the sort of thing that really made an impact later on in life. And when you stopped working, you know, when you went home from being at Mutt's, those are the sort of things where you'd sit there and you think, okay, I've got an idea now. And you approach it totally different.
What would Mutt do?
Exactly.
That's a T-shirt. That's for the next tour shit. What would Mutt do?
Exactly, yeah. That was a huge problem because sometimes that would get you into all kinds of grief, especially on a second album where Mutt's not involved. That would really get you into a load of grief because you can't do that. You just do what you do. It was hard to come to terms with working that stuff out. So you went around the houses quite a bit.
Start double guessing yourself.
Again, you start doing that. You start thinking, well, what would Mutt do and how can we make this sound so it sounds like this and that? And you can't do it. You're not able to do it. You just got to start then moving on with your songwriting and the idea with production and songcraft and try and make it your own as quickly as you possibly can. Just try and get as much stuff put down and done in the best way you know. And with all this new information that's been sort of thrown on you, you know, by John and by Mutt.
Have you and John stayed in touch? Because he's still got his studio up in Doncaster.
Absolutely. We went up there, we recorded part of the first demos and also did some recording on some of the other stuff that we were doing for the main Romeo's album.
I love it. Is this guy who's got like some of the biggest American sounding hits. Then he's just up the road in Doncaster. It's brilliant.
Mad, isn't it?
It's fantastic. How was it for you to finally get out and play those songs live? Because you'd focused so much on songwriting. Lee told me your first gig was at Buckley Tivoli, she figured out, in July 89, followed by a packed marquee club in London. She still had the diaries.
Oh, it was ridiculous. We came out at the marquee and I remember thinking, where'd all these people come from? The old marquee in Charing Cross Road, I think that took about 1,000 people because you had standing down the front and you had sitting at the top. So, yeah, I think it was probably about 750, 800 downstairs and then upstairs and, yeah, about 1,000 people. And I remember coming out through the middle of the stage, which is where the entrance to the stage was, and you just looked and you thought, my God, you know, there's just all these people.
Did your mum and dad ever come and see you live?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, loads. My dad's 86 this year, but he still comes to see you play, you know. Yeah, I lost my mum in 2004, which was a long time ago. But, yeah, Dad's always has.
You mentioned it earlier, I think Romeo's Daughter, they're a band that fell prey a little to not so great label and management decisions, not putting you out on tour. You only did like the radio tour in the USA, even though you had the Nightmare on Elm Street connection, and MTV was showing some interest to really push the single, but the label wouldn't chuck some more money at it. I don't know if you're someone who thinks much about what ifs, but is there anything particular you wish you could have changed? Something like, damn, why didn't someone say yes to that?
I think when you start out, the one thing you wished you were is a tad more savvy, you know, in a position to maybe say, actually, we want to do this. But things were moving so fast, it was kind of hard to keep up. As I say, by the time you'd sorted out ideas for maybe a video, you were doing it. I think we all wish we were a tad more savvy. There might have been a little bit lackadaisical when it comes to the record company because Mutt was involved. The first single looked like it was going to do something. And then the second single should have been just completely and utterly like backed up beyond belief, but it wasn't.
Did they think that because it had Mutt's name attached to it, that'd be a surefire thing?
Yeah. And it was getting there. There was no two ways about it. A lot of people in the industry were like really like making noises about it, to a point where, you'd say, oh, crikey, Phil Collins really likes the album. Heart are going to cover this song, Bonnie Tyler's going to cover this song. And that was really strange. We would have done the second album with Mutt. There's no two ways about it. We would have done that. But he was doing Waking Up the Neighbours with Bryan Adams, and we'd be in one studio writing, and he'd be popping in every 5 minutes. He'd be in the other one with Bryan Adams, doing all the Waking Up the Neighbours stuff. So the two were like this all the time, and we were thinking, well, it's going to be done. But in the end, I think something happened with Brian's voice because he'd been singing so much, and they ended up going through all the initial vocals and putting them all back together, and they took about 1.5 years longer than they were going to. So unfortunately, we ended up doing the album in another way, which was a real shame.
I still love that album. That album's great, man.
No, thank you.
I'll fire one last question at you, Craig. I'll put you on the spot a little bit. I want you to time travel a little to a Friday night in the late 80s or early 90s, right, and you're heading to the video store.
Oh.
What movie soundtrack do you have on your Walkman, and what 3 videos are you going to rent for the weekend? I don't know how much of a movie fan you are.
I love movies, actually. A really good movie soundtrack was Jerry Maguire. Really like that soundtrack, but I love the Shawshank Redemption soundtrack. Now, was that as early as 80s?
Shawshank Redemption, probably mid-90s, something like that. That's fine.
Yeah, that sort of area.
You'd still be able to get it from the video shop.
When you say you're transported back in time, am I at the age I am now transported back in time, or am I as I was?
Why, does that mean you're going to go and rent Porky's or something like that?
Well, the difference would be, I suppose, at the time, you'd be loving things like the John Hughes movies, The Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
Or Uncle Buck.
Great ones, man. And you get a great soundtrack with any John Hughes film as well.
Yeah, so of a night, that could have been Uncle Buck, that could have been The Green Mile. I love The Green Mile. When is that?
Again, it's 90s. It's definitely been on video.
Yeah.
Where was your local video shop back in the day? Do you remember?
Just down the road. Literally, you could walk there.
Was it just in a corner shop or a proper video shop?
It was a video shop, but, next to the grocers, when they were proper video shops, they're all the DVDs. And you think, I want to get a DVD, because it's like, I can get a DVD now because, you can watch it as it should be seen. I am a real film buff. I love it. You got Netflix and all that these days, we have all that kind of stuff. But yeah, back in the day, definitely Friday night, Chinese, couple of vids, off you go.
Sorted. Have you ever done any movie scoring?
Not scoring, no. I've scored music with quartets to work on library music. And I've done that kind of stuff on the acoustic. On the first album, I had a bit of cello and a bit of this, that, and the other. But I'm not a theory musician, definitely more of an ears musician, and always have been. I would love the idea to be able to write music and read music properly. But the sort of area of music that I work in, you don't need it. You don't use it that much. It's more of a well, let's have a belt, and you play.
I always say, I've got no music theory knowledge, and I'm probably doing stuff that if someone knew what they were talking about, oh, yeah, you're doing that. It's I don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it would be definitely that kind of thing, without a doubt.
Craig, I'll let you go, but thank you for your time and all the best with the new album. You've got dates throughout the rest of the year. Anything you're particularly looking forward to? I look forward to all of them. It sounds corny, Rob, but I really do. You get up on stage with just an acoustic guitar, it frits the life out of me. Really? When you go up with Romeo's, you're part of a gang. You're in your little zone and you play and everybody has that look, you look around and everybody's looking and they're all saying the same thing, which is like, yeah, you're back to the 80s and 90s, in that soundtrack that you love, all those films where the band go out there and play. But when you're in your Todd, it's a different ball game and I love it. And it's something I am absolutely loving getting used to. I'll look out for if there's any shows in the Midlands. I definitely have to come out and see you. Please. It'll be lovely to see you and meet you properly. All right, mate. You enjoy the rest of your day. Lovely to chat with you. And you, Rob. Take it easy, mate. All the best. Big thank you to Craig Joyner for joining me on this week's Straight to Video podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation and can't wait for hopefully more Romeo's Daughter music and live dates soon. For now, though, we can enjoy Craig's new solo record, A Kind of Calm, and hopefully catch a solo acoustic show later this year. Everything you need can be found at craigjoynermusic.com. Over at our 80s video shop in Alfreton, Derbyshire, which is just 10 minutes from junction 28 of the M1, we've been getting really busy with the shop and also event planning. We're open Saturdays and Sundays, and on the 22nd of June, we're hosting a special YouTube event featuring Oliver Harper and the Bad Movie Bible's Rob Hill, which we're calling Invasion VHS. The duo will be around in the afternoon meeting fans and viewers of their hugely successful YouTube review channels. Then in the evening there's a special ticketed event with a cult movie screening and a Q&A. So if you're a fan, please head on over to www.80svideoshop.co.uk to pick up tickets before it sells out. So that's all for this week's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll come back next Friday for a brand new show. Till then though, please make sure to always be kind, please rewind and unwind, and I'll speak to you all real soon.